The room went completely silent. Our plant manager wasn't shouting. He didn't need to. He simply held up a small cardboard box filled with company property and asked, "Can anyone explain why all of this was found in one employee's locker?" 8 pairs of eyes slowly turned toward the same man. He looked around the room, confused at first, then terrified. For months, he'd walked through this factory like he owned it. Nobody dared question him. Nobody challenged him. Nobody even borrowed a screwdriver without asking his permission. But that morning, everything changed. And the strange part? I never accused him. I never argued with him. I never even raised my voice. I simply waited. Because sometimes, the loudest revenge is letting people expose themselves. What would you have done? Asterisk, where patience beats revenge, and the truth always finds its way into the light. Asterisk, I never imagined a broom could teach me so much about people. It sounds ridiculous now. If you'd asked me a year earlier what could create tension between grown adults, I would have guessed money, promotions, politics, maybe personality clashes. Not a broom, definitely not a dustpan. Yet somehow, those two simple tools became the beginning of the biggest workplace lesson I'd ever witnessed. My name is Daniel. I was 56 years old and had spent nearly 3 decades working at Dawson Industrial Components, a medium-sized manufacturing plant outside Columbus, Ohio. It wasn't glamorous work. Our hands were permanently stained with grease. Our boots were never completely clean. The air always carried the smell of oil and hot metal. But it paid the bills. More importantly, it gave people like me stability. Most of us had worked together for years. We knew each other's kids. We celebrated birthdays, covered shifts during family emergencies, collected money whenever someone's wife got sick or a coworker lost a parent. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like a second family. Then, Kevin transferred into our department. The first week, everyone liked him. He smiled constantly, told funny stories, offered to buy coffee, volunteered for overtime. He knew exactly how to make a good first impression. Looking back, I think that's what made him dangerous. Because people who genuinely care don't spend so much energy trying to convince everyone they're good people. Kevin did. Every single day, our department worked in small production cells. Each station had shared equipment: brooms, dustpans, extension cords, cleaning supplies. Nothing belonged to one person. Everything belonged to everyone. At least, that was the idea. About 2 weeks after Kevin arrived, I noticed something strange. The newest broom had disappeared. Not missing, just gone. Instead of hanging beside the others, it sat inside Kevin's workstation, right beside his toolbox. Nobody said anything. Maybe he forgot. Maybe he'd bring it back. He didn't. A few days later, the newest dustpan disappeared too. Then the heavy-duty extension cord. Then the shop vacuum. Little by little, the best equipment slowly migrated into Kevin's corner. It wasn't theft. Technically, the items still belonged to the company. But if anyone needed them, they had to walk across the shop floor and ask Kevin. And somehow, asking always felt uncomfortable. "Need the vacuum?" he'd ask. "Sure." Then he'd sigh dramatically before handing it over. "Just don't break it," as if it belonged to him. Most people roll their eyes. A few quietly complained during lunch. Nobody confronted him. Why? Because workplaces are strange. People will tolerate years of irritation just to avoid 5 minutes of conflict, including me, at least, for a while. One afternoon, I finished my shift later than everyone else. Sweeping the metal shavings into one of the old cracked dustpans took forever. Half of it spilled back onto the floor. I muttered under my breath. Across the room, Kevin casually used the brand-new long-handled dustpan we'd received only a month earlier. No vending, no speeding, no frustration. He caught me looking, then smiled. "Should have gotten here earlier." He laughed. I didn't. Driving home that evening, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not because of the dustpan, because of what it represented. One selfish decision, repeated every day, slowly becoming normal. Nobody noticed when it started. Now, everyone accepted it. That bothered me far more than Kevin himself. The next morning, I arrived 20 minutes early. I wanted to see something. Kevin wasn't there yet. His workstation looked exactly the same. every shared tool, lined up neatly beside his bench. Our supervisor walked past without saying a word. So did maintenance. Even management. Nobody questioned why one employee had practically created his own private storage room. That's when I realized something important. People often ignore small problems because each one seems insignificant on its own, until one day, those tiny problems become a culture. That afternoon, during lunch, I sat beside Frank. Frank was 63, retiring in 6 months. He'd seen everything, or so I thought. You notice Kevin collecting equipment? I asked. Frank chuckled. Kid remind me of Squirrel. What do you mean? He doesn't need everything. He just likes knowing nobody else has it. That sentence stayed with me. He wasn't protecting tools. He was collecting control. Over the following weeks, it got worse. People stopped borrowing things entirely. Instead, they worked with broken equipment, old brushes, bent douchebons, frayed extension cords, anything to avoid another conversation with Kevin. Oddly enough, Kevin seemed to enjoy it. He'd lean against his workstation, watching everyone struggle. Sometimes he'd offer help. Sometimes he wouldn't. Either way, he looked satisfied. One Friday afternoon, our newest employee, Miguel, walked over to Kevin's station. Hey man, can I borrow the broom? Kevin looked up without even standing. I'm using it. Miguel glanced at the broom. It was leaning untouched against the wall. Oh, I can wait. Kevin shrugged. I'm going to need it later. Miguel quietly walked away. No argument. No complaint. Just defeat. Something about that bothered me far more than it should have. That weekend, my wife noticed I was unusually quiet. You've been thinking about work all day, she said while setting dinner on the table. I smiled. You know what's funny? What? I'm not angry. So what's wrong? I think I'm disappointed. In him. I shook my head. In all of us. She looked confused. I explained everything. The broom. The dustpan. The shared equipment. The way everyone simply accepted it. She listened without interrupting. Then she smiled. You've always believed people become who the group allows them to become. She was right. I'd said those exact words years earlier while coaching my son's Little League team. Funny how easily we forget our own advice. Sunday evening, an idea popped into my head. Not revenge, not a complaint, not an argument. Something much simpler. Something nobody would expect. I smiled to myself. For the first time in weeks, I actually looked forward to Monday morning. Kevin had no idea that by Friday, the entire department would be talking about him, and I still wouldn't have said a single angry word. I parked my truck 15 minutes earlier than usual. Not because I wanted another argument with Kevin. I was done arguing. The older I got, the more I realized something. People who crave attention often win arguments. People who quietly solve problems usually win respect. This wasn't going to be about proving Kevin wrong. It was going to be about making his behavior impossible to ignore. During my lunch break, I drove to the local hardware store. I walked past rows of cleaning supplies until something caught my eye. There it was, a commercial-grade broom with thicker bristles than anything we had at work. Right beside it, an ergonomic standing dustpan, the kind where you didn't have to bend over every few seconds. I picked them up. Then I noticed something else. They were on sale. I laughed. Well, I muttered. That makes this even easier. On the drive back, another thought crossed my mind. If I only bought equipment for myself, I'd become exactly like Kevin. Keeping the best tools to myself wouldn't solve anything. It would only create two selfish people instead of one. So I turned the truck around. Back to the store. This time, I bought 3 more standing dustpans, 2 extra heavy-duty brooms, and several replacement broom heads. My wallet hurt, but somehow, it felt worth it. The next morning, I carried everything into the factory before anyone else arrived. Frank nearly spilled his coffee. What on earth is all that? I smiled. A little experiment. By 7:30, everyone had gathered around. Miguel picked up one of the new dustpans. His eyes widened. No way. We're getting these? I nodded. They're for everyone. His smile reminded me why I'd done it. Kevin walked in 5 minutes later. He stopped dead in his tracks. The room felt strangely quiet. He looked from the brand new equipment to his little collection of private tools, then back again. Nobody said a wah. Our supervisor wandered over. What's going on here? I answered before anyone else could. I donated some equipment. You donated it? Yeah. The old stuff still works. But these are easier on everyone's backs. I figured we'd all benefit. He looked impressed. That's incredibly generous. Kevin stared at the floor. Within minutes, people were trying the new dustpans. Frank grinned like a kid. Miguel laughed. Even a maintenance crew borrowed one. The mood across the department changed overnight. People were talking, joking, helping each other. It was amazing what happened when nobody had to ask permission anymore. Kevin didn't touch any of the new equipment. Instead, he quietly swept his station using the old broom he'd guarded for months. Suddenly, it didn't look special anymore. Not even close. Around lunch, I overheard two welders talking. Remember when Kevin wouldn't let anyone use that broom? The other one chuckled. Guess it's not the nicest broom anymore. They laughed. Not cruelly, just honestly. Kevin heard every word. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. He wheeled his toolbox over beside me. I didn't know you were buying equipment. I wasn't. I bought it for everybody. He forced a smile. You could have told me. I looked at him. I didn't think I needed permission. His smile disappeared. For the rest of the week, people naturally gravitated toward the shared equipment. Nobody asked Kevin for anything anymore. Nobody walked to his workstation. Nobody waited for his approval. Without realizing it, his little kingdom had disappeared. Friday afternoon, our safety coordinator made his monthly inspection. He paused beside the cleaning station. This looks much better. He looked around. Who organized all this? Several people pointed toward me. I shrugged. It just made sense. He nodded. I wish every department worked like this. Kevin stood less than 10 feet away. Nobody looked at him. I thought the story was over. Honestly, I was satisfied. The department had better equipment. People were happier. No arguments. No complaints. Just a simple solution. But I had underestimated something. People who build their identity around control don't give it up quietly. The following Monday, Kevin arrived carrying a brand new rolling tool cabinet. It was huge, bright red, locked, and by lunchtime, I noticed something familiar. The company's newest tape measures had disappeared, so had the cordless drill batteries. And somehow, the only charger left in the department was sitting inside Kevin's cabinet. I looked over at Frank. He slowly shook his head. I don't think he learned a thing. I sighed. No, I think he just got smarter. At least, that's what he thought. Because what Kevin didn't know was that someone much higher up in the company had started asking questions. And this time, I wasn't the only one paying attention. Monday mornings usually follow the same routine. Coffee, safety meeting, production goals. Then everyone disappeared to their workstations. But this Monday felt different. Our supervisor, Linda, stood beside the whiteboard with an expression I'd never seen before. She wasn't angry. She looked curious. Before we start, she said, I need everyone's help with something. The room fell silent. We've been replacing more shared tools than any other department in the building. She looked around the room. Corporate wants to know why. Nobody spoke. Not even Kevin. For the first time, I noticed something in Kevin's face. Not confidence. Concern. It lasted only a second. Then he smiled. I'm sure things just wear out. Linda nodded politely. Maybe, but maintenance tells me most of the missing equipment isn't worn out. It's simply missing. That word echoed through the room. Missing. Kevin folded his arms. Everyone else exchanged quick glances. Over the next week, something changed. Without making any announcements, maintenance began placing tiny inventory stickers on every new shared tool. Nothing obvious, just small number labels. Most people never noticed. I did. So did Kevin. A few days later, Miguel walked over to me. Have you seen the new drill battery? I smiled. No. He looked toward Kevin's workstation. You thinking what I'm thinking? I shrugged. I've stopped guessing. The truth usually shows up by itself. Wednesday afternoon, Kevin approached me again. You've been talking about me? I looked up from my work. No. People are saying I take things. I haven't said a word. He stared at me for several seconds, then walked away. That was the strange thing. When people know they're innocent, they usually ask questions. When people know they're guilty, They ask who has been talking. By Friday, Linda announced something new. Starting next week, every department will complete a quick equipment audit before the end of each shift. A few people groaned. Nobody argued. Except Kevin. Isn't that a little excessive? Linda smiled. It'll only take 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Those 2 words seemed to bother him far more than they bothered anyone else. The following Tuesday, everything finally unraveled. I had just finished cleaning my station when Linda walked into the shop. She wasn't alone. Beside her stood Mark, the plant manager. And behind him, someone from corporate security. That almost never happened. Mark cleared his throat. We're doing a routine inventory inspection. Shouldn't take long. Nobody looked worried, except one person. They started checking storage cabinets, supply shelves, maintenance carts. Everything matched the inventory sheet. Then they reached Kevin's bright, red, rolling toolbox. Mark smiled politely. Kevin, would you unlock this for me, please? Kevin hesitated. It's mostly my personal stuff. I'm sure. But company policy allows inspections of anything brought on a company property. Another long pause. Finally, he unlocked the cabinet. The top drawer opened. Nothing unusual. The second drawer looked normal too. Then the third drawer slid open. The room became completely silent. Inside were 6 company tape measures, 3 unopened boxes of drill bits, 4 battery chargers, safety glasses still in company packaging, brand new utility knives, extension cords, cleaning supplies, even 2 inventory scanners that belonged to another department. Nobody said a word. Mark slowly picked up one of the chargers. The inventory sticker was still attached. He looked at Kevin. Can you explain this? Kevin swallowed. I was organizing them. For who? No answer. You were organizing equipment inside your personal toolbox. Kevin looked around the room. Nobody came to his defense. Not one person. Then something happened I never expected. Frank quietly stepped forward. So, that's where the good tape measures went. A few people laughed. Not because it was funny, because months of frustration had finally made sense. Miguel shook his head. I thought I was losing my mind. I kept blaming myself. Another coworker added, I bought my own extension cord because I thought ours disappeared. One by one, people began remembering. The missing batteries, the missing gloves, the missing tools. It wasn't one incident. It was dozens. Kevin tried one last explanation. I was just keeping everything together. Mark nodded. I believe you. Kevin looked relieved. Then Mark continued. The problem is, none of it belonged to you. Corporate security photographed every drawer, every inventory sticker, every serial number, everything. Nobody accused Kevin of stealing. It didn't have to. The evidence spoke for itself. By the end of the day, his toolbox was empty. Every company item had been returned. Kevin was escorted into human resources. The shop floor felt strangely quiet, not celebratory, just lighter. 2 days later, his workstation sat empty. No announcement. No remate gudvie. Just an empty bench. Someone eventually asked where he'd gone. Linda simply replied, he's no longer with the company. That was it. No gossip. No insults. Just consequences. A week later, Mark stopped by my station. I've been meaning to thank you. For what? You solve a culture problem without creating a people problem. I laughed. I didn't solve anything. I just bought a few brooms. He smiled. No, you reminded everyone what sharing was supposed to look like. Several months passed. The department changed. People stopped guarding equipment. If someone finished using a tool, they returned it immediately. New employees copied what they saw. Helping became normal again. Funny how quickly good habits spread when someone chooses to start them. One afternoon, Miguel walked over carrying a brand new broom. Guess what? What? They promoted me to team lead. I smiled. Congratulations. He laughed. You know the first thing I did? What? I put every shared tool on one rack. No names. No locks. Just shared. I couldn't help smiling. Sounds familiar. He grinned. I learned from watching you. Driving home that evening, I thought about everything that had happened. Looking back, Kevin was never really fighting over brooms, or tape measures, or batteries. He was fighting for control, because some people confuse ownership with respect. They believe that if everyone has to ask them for something, they become important. But real respect doesn't come from controlling people. It comes from making life easier for them. That's a lesson no training manual can teach. Only experience can. Sometimes people ask if I regret never confronting Kevin directly. Honestly, no. If I'd yelled, people would have remembered the argument. If I complained, people would have debated who was right. Instead, I solved the problem. And eventually, the truth solved the rest. Because here's something I've learned after 30 years in the workplace. Character always reveals itself. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but eventually, it always does. You just have to give enough time. Hashtag final reflection. That old broom is long gone now. The dustpans have been replaced. Even the building has been renovated. But every time I see coworkers sharing tools without a second thought, I remember Kevin. Not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with gratitude. Because one selfish coworker reminded all of us what a good team is supposed to look like. And in the end, he didn't lose his job because someone exposed him. He lost it because he spent months quietly exposing himself. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive with shouting, revenge, or humiliation. Sometimes it arrives quietly, one honest choice at a time. And when the truth finally stands in the light, those who built their lives on selfishness realize something too late. They never saw it coming. Thanks for watching. They never saw it coming. If this story made you think, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Asterisk, what would you have done?